talk about their achievements and stories of bravery. The Associations for International Peace and Security is a student-run organization at the LSE aiming to host impactful discussions and create opportunities for the LSE community to hear and interact with leading experts and build relationships across academic disciplines in international politics and governance. Given the current events in Afghanistan, and with the Taliban taking over Afghanistan last August, Afghanistan is facing humanitarian, political, and education crisis, leading to a triple crisis in Afghanistan. The Afghan women's position in the society remains uncertain. Our discussion today about Afghan women, the role of civil society moving forward, and how do international actors and community need to change their policy towards an understanding of Afghanistan post-Taliban takeover becomes more significant and timely here. And we hope that our program today offers you, all the information, all the insights, and all the analysis about today's current events. For those of you who would like to ask questions to panelists, you can use the chat box on Zoom, and we'll have a Q&A session at the end of the program. So feel free to add your questions. Also, those of you who want to ask questions anonymously, please message Olivia in the group. She is a co-host, so message Olivia. I repeat, and please make sure that you are on mute because it sometimes gets very chaotic. And also, I wanted to mention that the meeting will be recorded, and so those who want to share with family and friends afterwards to hear about today's event, they can do that. Our moderator for tonight's panel discussion is Professor James Putzel from the London School of Economics, Department of International Development. And I will pass it along to him to introduce our panelists for tonight and get the discussion started.
Sveto, thank you very much for that. And thank you to the Chadari Project and to the Student Association for International Peace and Security. I'm always delighted to see students taking this kind of an initiative. We have a lot of speakers, and they are really quite an extraordinary lineup. So I would like to introduce the speakers first, and then we're going to proceed directly into the discussion by asking questions, and each speaker will have a chance to respond, and then we'll see how things go along. And then we're hoping that we'll have plenty of time for your questions as well, which, as Sveto said, we can put into the chat. So it gives me great pleasure, first of all, to welcome back Pastana Durrani, who spoke to our department, our students earlier in the academic year. Pastana is an activist, human rights defender, and community development expert. Focusing on digital literacy, she is the founder and director of the grassroots level nonprofit Learn Afghanistan. Through Learn's project, Soraya, she has educated 900 girls and boys in Kandahar. Her nonprofit has also started emergency relief programs for women and children facing malnutrition and starvation in Afghanistan. Pastana is currently working as a senior fellow at Wellesley College in Massachusetts and continuing her work on girls' education. So Pastana, welcome back. Secondly, we have Fareshte Farrow, Fareshte Farrow is an Afghan social activist and is the chief executive officer and founder of Code to Inspire, the first coding school for girls in Afghanistan. It was located in Herat, which is just in the west of the country. She's an advocate for gender equality, and the empowerment of women in Afghanistan through digital literacy, education, and financial independence. She's already widely internationally known from her TED Talk in 2013 and winner of many awards. Fereshteh continues to operate her school in Afghanistan and has voiced her desire to open new branches of Code to Inspire in other cities in Afghanistan as well as in the MENA region. So Fereshteh, welcome. Thirdly, we have Zarifa Ghaffari, who's an Afghan activist and politician. In November 2019, she became the mayor of Maidan Vardak province, which is just south of Kabul. Zarifa was one of Afghanistan's few female mayors and the youngest to be appointed at the age of 26. She is known for her efforts to advance women's rights in Afghanistan. Zarifa was chosen as an International Woman of Courage in 2020 by the US Secretary of State, and she's survived 3 assassination attempts. I understand you've also received, Zarifa, a recent award from the Geneva Summit for Human Rights and Democracy, the International Women's Rights Award. Then we have Sarah Wahidi. Sarah is founder and CEO of Ihtisab, an app which provides residents of Afghanistan with information on security and emergencies through crowdsourcing verified reports. As Afghanistan's first civic technology startup, the app helps to contextualize dangerous or unsettling situations, such as those including bombings or roadblocks. She was named a 2021 Time Magazine Next Generation Leader and one of BBC's 100 Women, and was featured in InStyle 2022, The Badass 50. Now I understand she's in New York City studying human rights at Columbia University. So what a lineup we have. And without further ado, I would like to start off with a broad question, perhaps just to get your headline reactions. So what we want to ask is, what are the overarching priorities facing Afghanistan right now? How do they fit together, and are they in competition? Pashtana, do you want to begin?
Thank you, James. Thank you for that question. And it's always amazing to share a platform with the amazing and known panelists like Fereshteh, Sarah, Zarifa, and also, let's not forget, Sveto, who is an amazing advocate for gender and human rights. Coming back to your topic and your question, I think we have to understand that right now, when we look at Afghanistan, there are 2 sorts of groups, right? One is talking about end Afghanistan starvation, which is important and needs to be done. And then there is one who solely focuses on education and, more political side of the topic. But here's the one thing that I have noticed between the 2. They tend to focus on their own issue more, so that the other issue becomes always a second opinion or something that's not prioritized. And one thing I have learned from living in Afghanistan, these all things go hand in hand. Poverty, people under poverty line, people starving, was not being in school, go hand in hand. If you don't send your daughter to school, if there are no opportunities for her to have any job, people will continue to live in that poverty, under their poverty line, for the rest of the eternity, and you can't change that. But one thing we forget and tend to forget is the fact that these are not supposed to be prioritized. These are all supposed to be worked on. These are all supposed to be highlighted. These are all supposed to be given the highlight as in the news, but also solutions that actually focus on these. I always get disappointed, I'm going to be honest, when I see these two groups just focusing on the one thing, which is a good thing. But I hate to see the fact that whenever it comes to girls' education, it's always seen as a Western agenda, which is not, because I was before this panel discussion, I was talking to someone from Nangarhar who was willing to donate 2 of his house rooms for girls' school. And every time, like, it comes back to me and people are like, oh, but people don't support education in Afghanistan. Well, if they don't, then he wouldn't be telling me that in the 90s, his mom was the woman who was running school in Nangarhar to teach girls. And yesterday I was in touch with someone from Mazar and they were telling me the same thing. So people of Afghanistan do prioritize education. People of Afghanistan would have prioritized education always, only if the country was not so much pushed towards political radicalism, and which was used through education, by the way. And if we don't have to forget the fact that it was University of Nebraska and UNESCO hand in hand that actually radicalized our books, where 2 plus 1 pen is equal to 3 pens was changed into 2 bullets plus 1 bullet is equals to 3 bullets, and Jim for Jihad was introduced in our books, primary level books. Kids are not supposed to be exposed to all that stuff in the 80s. And they did that to go against the Soviets. So when that was done, when that was prioritized, kids were radicalized, and that is the generation that has been haunted by those horrors. So we have to see that all these things go hand in hand. People send their kids to school to find good opportunities in the future, to have a stable life. And one thing we tend to forget is that Afghanistan, people are normal Afghans. They don't have a lot of hopes and or dreams and opportunities other than having their kids in school, living a normal life, having peace and security, and just going about their day, and which the world powers always tend to fail them in a very extreme level. So that's a head start for all of us.
Thank you, Pashtana. So people need to keep learning as well as being able to eat. But we should underline that, it's said most recently by the World Food Program that 95% of the population is facing quite acute hunger, not to lessen in any way the point that you're making. Faritesh.
Yes.
Farishte, yes. I'm sorry.
No worries. It's not
I'll
a
get
common
to know
name.
you before the evening's over.
No problem. I understand. It's a bit difficult for people to pronounce my name. Not a very common name. But yeah, I guess what I can kind of like comment on what Pashtana said and kind of like expanded. Of course, right now, the critical situation for people in Afghanistan is hunger crisis. And when you see the hunger crisis, it does have a lot of other severe consequences that cannot be prevented. One of the important things that I want to say is when people face hunger crisis, and we all witness this in Afghanistan, is that families tend to find an avenue for themselves to make money. And unfortunately and sadly, what we're witnessing is that families are trying to sell their children. And when they want to sell their children, unfortunately, they prioritize selling their daughters because they think that there's no incentive in the daughter being at home in case of bringing job or any opportunity for them. So sadly, they try to sell the daughter in case of bringing, a short-term kind of like a cash in the family. And what we see that is that the girls are being forced to get married very, underage, very young. And unfortunately, being forced to marry in such a young age that you don't know your rights, you don't know anything about, what's going on around you. And you see the girls playing outside in the streets or playing with their, like other girls, and they just grab their hands and they force them to get married because the family wants to get some cash. And that actually also lead to another issue of violence. All of these girls, young, very underage, sadly, they will be, in a situation that the families, take advantage of them. They force them to do some labor work. They torture them. They face violence, and that's another level of like trauma that this generation of the girls gonna go through. So I really want to emphasize that when we talk about hunger, there's a lot of issues about violence, not only directly to the women, but also there are a lot of people who are willing to get paid for a very small amount of money to, go kidnap people, kill people, torture people, or do anything just because they really need to get that money. Or they, have an incentive of saying that, okay, like maybe someone give me money and I can do for them whatever they want me to do. And that's how is an avenue of, recruiting, and financing, terrorism and recruiting people, into radicalized groups because they don't have any way of income. So I really want to emphasize that the hunger crisis is not only about people not having food on their plate. It's about, a lot of factors that I said that makes the whole situation much more difficult for people to handle.
Thank you, Karista. Let me now ask the same question to Zarifa.
Thank you so much, James. Hi to everyone. Actually, when we are talking about Afghanistan situation, I think the both comments from Pashtana and Freshta, the both are general things that everyone will talk about nowadays about Afghanistan and the situation for people in that country. Because mostly right now it's humanitarian crisis, which needs to be the hot topic on the table. But I just want to mention by really emphasizing the comments of Pashtana and Freshta that when we are talking internationally about Afghanistan, unfortunately, we are still missing that right way to point the situation in Afghanistan. We are still talking about the types of a government. We are still talking about Taliban. We are still talking about how regime works. We are still talking about how the government should be now or in the future. No one puts humanitarian discussions prior and important before then political decisions, then political engagements, and this government types and all that. Due to the normal knowledge of what the types of governments are and how the governments work in a country, it's always nation that builds government. It's always the nation which really create government and support it and run it. But in my country, in Afghanistan, we are still just forgetting about the people, and all internationally, everyone is busy with this, like all the governments. Not only internationally, but like there are massive groups inside the country, inside, not only inside the country, but there are so many groups which are lobbying internationally as well, which are themselves Afghans. They are also, whenever they are talking about Afghanistan, they are bringing the discussion of the type of government, the inclusive government, and then like all these political discussions on the table more prior than nation of the country. So what I will talk about it, and I will more focus on it. It's about bringing prior the topic of nation and people, then political decisions internationally, because actually I won't talk about what's happening nationally inside the country, because the insights of Pashtana and Farishta is the same for every one of us. We already actually myself, I was in Kabul in end of February and starting of March. I had a short trip there, so I saw how amazingly this starvation, the humanitarian crisis, the rise of women, the abuses, and so many things going on in a same time. Healthcare topics for the people, but in particular for women. These are the topics that are inside the country. But when we are talking about that country, internationally, we have some more topics as well, and that the topic of engagement of international community and focus of international community in a time where all the attentions are to Ukraine, not only in Europe, but in US and so many other countries as well. We need to draw this attention back to Afghanistan, but this time not to government of this country, but to people of this country, and to the, in particular, to women, because the most biggest part of these victims, they are women in that country, which are starving. So, because we are having millions of widows on that in that country, which are nowadays not able to go to work. They are not able to walk alone. They're just abandoned in rooms, and finally the result comes to sell their children, or maybe body parts, home stuff, or maybe do whatever the crime or whatever the thing is possible for them to earn some money out of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Zarifa. I imagine, and we'll get a chance to come back on this, that there is this burning need in the face of hunger to get humanitarian aid into Afghanistan, and it's not nearly arriving in the quantities that are necessary. And in part because there was a big European Union donors meeting, etc., and they seem to be withholding aid because the Taliban government has banned girls from school. So we come up against this kind of a tension, and I hope that we'll get on to suggesting what should be the attitude towards getting humanitarian aid in, and should it be linked in this way, as seems to be happening, with the demand for a reversal of this awful position of denying girls education. But before we come back on that, Sarah Wahidi, would you like to say something about the overarching big questions?
Of course, James, thank you so much. First, I want to thank my dear friend Sveto and also my other panelists, Pashtuna John, Farishta John, Zarifa John. They're all women that I look up to, so it is an honor to be on this panel. I mean, the first thing that Pashtuna John had said, I mean, it is difficult to choose which one of the two is more important. And I think, unfortunately, we have been pushed into this situation where we can't, achieve both within the time frame that we want and to the level that we would like to. Of course, with humanitarian aid, the Taliban is making decisions which is fundamentally starving the Afghan people. And I keep reminding people who are looking at the Afghan context that they have to decide what's important for them. And for now, it's not the Afghan people, because this misogyny that is going on of keeping girls over the grade of 6 outside of school, it speaks volumes as to something in which women have this young girls and women want to get an education, and that education, that curriculum, is not a Western curriculum, as Pashtuna John had said. I mean, this is a curriculum that has been around for decades. So the fact that still they are negating young girls from attending school speaks to what is important to them as an institution. And of course, that makes humanitarian response impossible, because the international community wants to know that the money that is being allocated is going to be allocated properly. And I think that it requires much more a push from the Afghan people themselves, because this isn't going to change. And as much pressure as the international community brings, it's only going to affect the humanitarian response. No one outside of Afghanistan is able to push and say, okay, the Taliban needs to change. It needs to come within the country. I'm not sure what that will take, because the country is crippled by war, by trauma. We also have to empathize with the people, but I understand the crux here, which is that, you can't force the international community to change the Taliban. But at the same time, people need to understand that the humanitarian aid isn't in there because the Western communities don't want to assist. There's ample money. there is ample money to be given for the humanitarian response, but the Taliban needs to meet the international community at this ground level, and they're not. The reason for that, like I said, is fundamentally a misogynistic agenda that the Taliban has. They hate seeing this new generation of Afghan women that are fundamentally Islamic. That's another thing that I wish to emphasize, is this notion that there is this westernization going on outside of Kabul. There isn't. You know, you still have the fundamental Islamic beliefs, and women are very, very passionate about that, but they also want their education. They want to be able to support their families. So this notion that the Taliban has of these women being, you know, brainwashed into Western ideals is completely false. And, you know, it just goes to show that when they're given platforms to speak, which I still find infuriating, that the world wants to even speak with them. And if they're going to speak with them, they should speak with them directly about this juxtaposition where they're saying that women are receiving, you know, a Western education or Western ideals when they are not. This is just the fundamental education that young girls have a right to. And the narrative needs to change. When the world is speaking with the Taliban, you know, be direct with them about the lies, about making March 23rd such a pinnacle moment for the world and for Afghans, and then taking it back from them in such a horrific way. So for me, it's difficult. I've been focusing so much on human rights violations in my work, and I was thinking about this panel this morning, and everyone knows that human rights violations are going on in Afghanistan. Recording them, I mean, in every province, in every village, everywhere, you know that those things are going on. But more and more, if I can advocate for those who are, you know, working on education, like Farishta Jan and like Pashtana Jan, you know, whatever I can do to support their work, now that I'm seeing the importance of it, I will do so. Of course, speaking about the humanitarian response, but I'm thinking about an entire generation. Afghanistan has one of the youngest youth populations in the world, and we are destroying the next 30, 40 years of our country. And whatever all of us can do here to support that next education moving forward is integral.
I would imagine we'll have a chance to talk more about the role of the international actors, but I imagine that on the one hand, there's an urgent need for food. If David Miliband is correct, you know, from the International Rescue Group, he says that the danger right now is that hunger could kill more Afghans than all of those who died during the last 30 years of war. So, I mean, it really is a dire situation in that sense. And one wouldn't want to see this accepting this kind of trade-off, I would think. I mean, there's all sorts of points of leverage the West would have, particularly around the reserves, which we'll come on to, the withholding of Afghans' foreign reserves, to continue to put pressure against the misogynist kind of policies you're talking about. I know, Pashtana, you want to come in, but maybe if it's on this issue, let's take off from what you've all been saying about the situation of women, and perhaps I could ask you to tell us how the status of women has changed since the arrival back. We know that schooling's been denied, but how has it changed, and how can women inside and outside of Afghanistan affect any change? You're talking about the need that this has to be addressed. So how can they affect any change as we're moving forward, and what can be done right now to promote equitable access to public services? How do you envision the future going forward? So perhaps you have some ideas about the steps that both women inside are playing, and you know what people outside could be advocating for. Yeah, and shall I pass right to Pashtana? Yeah, I'll reverse the order later, but I know you had your hand.
Thank you so much, James. Thank you so much, James, for the three-part question. Very essay type. Thank you so much for that. let's start with the status of women. I mean, 7 months ago, I belonged to a country where women like Zarifa were part of the Ministry of Defense or Interior. I forgot that, Zarifa, if you're Ministry of Defense or Interior, but you're part of one of the two ministries. We had women parliamentarians. We had women in provincial we cannot say parliament, but Jirga. We had women on rural areas. They were representative of that. We had women in school who were teaching. We had, as a country, 30% of the workforce was actually women. And 7 months, 8 months later, I am looking at a country where there is no women in that position like Zarifa was. Or anyone else in that position at all. I don't see women teaching in schools. I don't see people on provincial, parliamentarian, or any level working. And this actually alienates the whole nation, not just women. It alienates the whole nation. Let me give you an example. A simple example would be the Sikh community. The Sikh community had one representative. It was Dr. Anarkali Hunaryar, and she was one of the best of Afghanistan. And she gave 20 years of her life to Afghanistan and to the Sikh community of Afghanistan. She was not just women representative of the Sikh community, but a representative of the whole community, the men and the women. And today she's a refugee in India. She stays in India and she doesn't have a home to return back. A country that is her home currently doesn't honor her, give her the space that she should be working in. So when we talk about inclusion, when we talk about women's status in Afghanistan, it has changed drastically, but it has also replaced, alienated other ethnicities, religious minorities, and women in general, especially young girls from grade 6 till grade 12. That is the status of women right now, simple for you. Now, the second thing that we need to focus on, and as you asked, what needs to be done or what could be done as an international community. I think the most important thing would be, and I continue to suggest it everywhere, is a task force that needs to be put in place of women like Dr. Anarkali Hunaryar, of people who have actually worked in Afghanistan, of educators like Farishta Farooq, who actually know Herat, who know where this girl comes from, which district. I don't know Herat. I don't know how it functions. And here's the fun thing. A few months ago, I reached out to Farishta. I asked her, I was like, can you introduce me to one of your students? And we need to hire her for our school in Kabul. And she was able to do it in 2 days. Under 2 days, we had a coding instructor that is teaching from Herat in our school in Kabul. So just imagine the amazing work that all these amazing women have been doing, and they're doing it on local level. I don't see any international community support coming through for Farishta, Sarah, Zarifa, or me, or anyone else. We're doing it on our own. We are literally fundraising. We are literally fighting the whole world to make sure that the spotlight stays on Kandahar, on Herat, or any other province in Afghanistan. Now that we do that, when we do that, the international community is expected to respond back to that, not just engage with me. I see the special envoy emailing me and talking to me every week. I talk to them and their office, but not even once they have highlighted or focused on the digital literacy work that is being done in Afghanistan, or the fact that people are starving and what can be done for them, right? Putting a country under sanctions is the easiest thing that you could do, and I continue to see it. But at the same time, putting Taliban under travel sanctions could be much easier to do, but they haven't done it. And that's where it makes me question it. What the Taliban are doing right now is stopping girls from going to school, but the US is not stopping the Taliban from going anywhere. The Taliban can still fly out to Qatar. The Taliban can still fly out to Norway to hold those negotiations. While my girls cannot go to school, or I cannot enter my own country without a mahram because I need apparently a husband or a brother with a passport. And my brother is literally 19. He doesn't have that stamina to travel with me back and forth. So internationally, I think the international community has to come together, has to be practical about Afghanistan, has to make sure that it puts measures in place, task force in place that focuses on education, food security, inclusion in the government, Human Rights Watch, all those things, but Afghan-led. For once, we have to make sure that it's Afghan-led and not led by foreigners, because foreigners were there for the past 20 years and they didn't do a good job. If they did, we wouldn't be standing here. For the past 3 years, the Taliban have been whitewashed by people who are actually working in think tanks, and it backfired big time. So we need Afghan women in the lead. Right now, I saw yesterday that the UN Secretary General is actually pushing for an Afghan woman to be part of the team in UNAMA and UN. That's a good step. Others need to follow. European Union needs to follow. The US needs to follow, but they are not doing so. So for me, it's very important the international community to take a stand, engage with women who actually work on the ground, actually know how many districts are there in their province, how many villages are in their province, where are people who work where, what is needed on the ground, how is a school run, rather than just engaging with people who were there in power and were corrupt, didn't even engage with people, don't have any set record of the past 20 years of work, and still continue to find a career with this new crisis. So we have to understand that engagement needs to be done with genuine stakeholders, but also community developers. At the same time, with the Taliban, the important engagement needs to be for them to understand that if you can send your daughter to school in Qatar, daughters of Afghanistan need to go to school in Afghanistan, or you don't stay in power. That's what they did with Pakistan. Why can't they do it with Afghanistan? I mean, so yeah.
Peshana, I think you make a really important point here about Afghan women leading the way. And this is, of course, true more widely than Afghanistan in terms of not only the way that official donor agencies work, but also international NGOs. And I think you're making a really important point there. I mean, perhaps, Pareshte, you can pick up on what Pashtana said. And also, I understand that there's been some reports in the news anyway, that there is division inside the Taliban over this attitude of blocking girls' education. I mean, such that it's reached public notice. I wonder how much that what you think about that division, because of course the Taliban are in power, and so I'm sure there are all sorts of new ways that people inside and those of you who are outside campaigning need to be able to exercise pressure over those who control the state. And perhaps those fractures can be played upon. Farishta.
Yes, well, to be honest with you, I think I would like to a little bit emphasize on the status of women, even though on the initial conversations, Arifa John said that, yes, like the hunger and the women issue, everyone knows. But if you don't remind the world about what's going on in Afghanistan on a daily basis, then you're trying to normalize the situation. Yeah. If I don't talk about the women's situation every day, then we're going to forget about it. And then also, like, I try to indirectly normalize that, oh yes, hunger crisis in Afghanistan, oh yes, people are dying, So like, I think as much as people around the world know about the situation of women in Afghanistan, we have to emphasize every day and let the world know about it. Like recently, just about a couple of days ago, there was a picture of this girl from Herat who wanted to travel to Iran for her master program. And because her father was sick and she didn't have any brother to go with a male companion to Iran, the Taliban bit her at the border, and she posted, very, very graphic image of her body. Why? Because she just wanted to go to Iran to study, right? But right now there are women who freely can go back and forth to Afghanistan and to other places. And I'm not sure what's the difference between those women and those girls that they want to just like leave Afghanistan and continue education. So it's very important to talk about it and tell the world that you can't just like play a double standard role here. Say some are okay, but then the rest are not okay to do that. And I think that's very important to talk about. And about the status of women in Afghanistan, yes, things have changed drastically. I can just like talk in a very small scale about my school, about my girls. You know, I have the coding school in Herat. It's the first coding school. We've been operating for years, since 2015. 350 of my students and girls who access the free education, who learn about coding, who learn about graphic design, who were the main breadwinner of their family. Right now, they're at home. They can't go outside to do any work. They can't come to school because my school is closed. It's been closed since August. And why that's happening, why we are trying, you know, to prevent women to practice very basic fundamental human rights that in Quran, even if Taliban say that we are practicing Islam, and if they believe in the Islamic, you know, notion of giving rights to women, there are a lot of surahs and verses in Quran that encourage people to read, to write. So, you know, so you kind of like see this double standard even in Taliban policy and their beliefs and what they try to implement in the community and, you know, force people to do that. So there's nothing wrong with education. Again, Islamic wise, a lot of, you know, Islamic countries, just look at a lot of other Islamic countries. How come the girls go to school there, and why the girls in Afghanistan can't go to school? What's wrong with it? So just going back to the life that has changed, in a smaller scale in our students and the coding school that I have, majority of them were the main breadwinner of the family. You know, they were making a decent job. They were, you know, getting paid. Some of them actually double or triple than the men in the family. The average income monthly family in Afghanistan is $150. So before the Taliban takeover, 70 to 60% of the graduates of our school were hired in the community. We've outsourced about 40 projects worth of $40,000 to all these girls who, you know, get paid $100 to $2,000, and then they bring income to the family, and they, you know, participated in the well-being of the family. So now, when you exclude those girls, there's no income in the family. There's no incentive for them also to continue their education. You technically try to imprison them. You think that they're free because, you know, of course they can, like, you know, still the girls go to school 1st and 6th grade, and still, you know, it's kind of like again, like it's a funny game that like they give a little bit and they get something from you. So they think that, oh, if you let the girls from 1st to 2nd, it's a 6th grade go to school, then that's good. But then how about the rest of the community? How about the rest of the girls? So it was just probably, I guess, like late August, early September that I received hundreds of messages from our girls who texted me and who said that we don't have any food at home because we lost a job. My parents are sick. My parents are disabled. I have a sibling that needs medical care, and I was the only breadwinner. What can I do? My only hope is that I should reach out to you and see if you can help me. And it was so heartbreaking to see these young girls who were so much in their career flourishing, all of a sudden are being kept at home, and their basic fundamental human rights are taken away from them. And what I did, I was like, okay, to your point, in case of how to engage international community and other people, I reached out to anyone I knew at my network and I explained the situation. And then I became partner with, you know, Binance Charity, and we identified the families, and then we gave them, you know, cash assistance for about 5 months so that they can survive. And I had girls constantly emailing me, calling me, messaging us in our social media, asking if we are able to open our school in their cities, either online or in person. The girls and the demand are so high, and it's so unfair. It's so unfair for us to think that, like, it just, you know, like, let's just see what's going to happen. No, we can't wait. We have to push as much as we can in our own capacity. And I understand, you know, the international community. Look what happened in Afghanistan in the past 2 decades. You know, billions of dollars poured in Afghanistan, but the mismanagement of handling those aids and money. And one important thing that always the international community, I guess, forget is how to find the key players, the grassroots organizations on the ground and work with them rather than being partnered with these big organizational entities that get caught in their bureaucracy. That was something that was missing. And that's why you see that not much, a lot of, infrastructure things regarding education, health, or anything you look at happen because there was a mismanagement in managing those funds. And right now, if any international organizations want to support, they should directly find the grassroots organizations, people who are on the ground, and literally saving lives and work with them rather than thinking about how to navigate the path of like working in a larger scales, because in every small scales you can change a lot of lives.
Faritesh, thank you very much. You're already anticipating my next question, but I want to give the others a chance to also speak to this one about the specific situation of women, and I'm just wondering, Zarifa, do you think that there's room to exploit the differences that exist in the Taliban to pursue this fight to get women access to education again, to the public space, to the what you're all arguing is such a pivotal role that women have played. I think Farishte made a really important point, because if we think about when Taliban first came to power, their attitude towards women was normalized very quickly, and there was very little action that was brought to bear. And I think it is true that unless this is constantly put out front, it can become very quickly normalized, particularly among those who are outside the country. Zarifa.
Thank you so much, James. As Freshta said, first it's when we are talking about current status of women in Afghanistan, then definitely there are like huge crises, and more importantly, as an example, Pashtana said, we had so many more women on the ground serving the country and population. Now about 30% of national budget was because of women's participation in economic growth of the country. More than near about 50% of at least teachers from for schools and universities and all the country, like around the country, they were women. And it's like, they all came to a zero, and somehow if we are having some of them still on the ground, it's still some still everyone just waiting to have a platform which can help them to just live for themselves, for their life, for their future, or maybe for their children. And the ones who can at least reach some of accesses, they are starving and waiting. The most important topic is right now about how we can work to bring this to break this difference between the Taliban right now. It's also a good topic to discuss, but I don't think that these Taliban, which like example, I'm saying it that just in Doha office of Taliban, there are 27 members, and about 26 of these members are having their families in Doha, in Qatar, which mostly women and girls and sisters of them are normally going to universities and schools. Just one of them is the one who really don't like, his family is still the dark-minded one, and he's still not allowing women to be part of the society. So the same with the higher education ministers sisters and daughters, they are studying in Karachi of Pakistan. They are already there, and they are enrolled in university and schools. But still, the same minister is coming out and banning universities, or maybe putting some regulations, and then the schools for girls, because the Minister of Education is also having her daughters going to school in Quetta of Pakistan. So this is what's happening in the middle of them. So the ones who are that open-minded for themselves or their families are also like trying to push and put regulations and sanction and abandons to Afghan women in that country. So what I want to say is about, we are not able to bring these real ones on the table and to the discussion table, because they are not the ones where which people are thinking of them. They are not that we already experienced them in 90s, so it's the same. But if they are modernized, the modernized level is also not helping the community right now in Afghanistan. And they are also not bringing this because of 2-3 normal reasons. One is because of their own fate of jihad or the war. They are fighting, they have been fighting 20 years by the name of that if girls or women are having like their humanitarian rights in the country, it's just because there is no religion stuff, like we are not Muslims, so they have the right to kill us. So if now they are allowing these girls, and I have been noticing through so many newses from inside of them on social media and some articles, that they are having problem with their own soldiers too, that if they are opening schools or universities for girls, so they are the same girls that they were fighting against it. They are the same rights that they were fighting this 20 or more than that years for them. Secondly, it's about they are using, Taliban are right now using women rights, especially the girls' education and the school staff, as a lobbying term to international communities, this table of discussion. They have been waiting to announcements of releasing money in mid of March, but it never happened. And right now they are still doing it. They are bringing this topic of women rights as a lobbying topic to the international community to earn money, and because right now the Taliban, if you are talking about legitimacy to Taliban or recognition of the Taliban, I don't think that will really be something that they care about it, because they already own that country. So what they care about is the money. What they care about is the finance stuff that the world needs to pay. And when the world is not paying, so definitely the only tool that they can pressurized word with it is the woman of the country. And the third one is, it's about how exactly the third topic to discussion is exactly what we need to do in Afghanistan and what we have been through. Actually, I'm right now I'm working through my own organization. I have been starting, it's the 6th month of working in Kabul to educational and vocational training center with a free maternity healthcare center where women are receiving all free maternity healthcare services for free. And these vocational trainings are tailoring classes and handicrafts, and education is like all the secondary and high school classes being taught by woman to woman, like by presence, and then Kabul. So with this center, we have been, when I was there, I have been talking to the doctor who is in the center in charge of the maternity center. I was talking to her. She told me that there have been, right now, she's working in one of the governmental hospitals as well, by the name of Rabia Balkhi. So she told me that tonight I had like 90 deliveries in hospital just by myself. And I was like, why just you alone? So she told me previously we were 4 people working in a night shift, but now it's just one person working in a proper night shift. And when I asked her that where are the 3 rest, she told me that the 3 left because one of them, like, because most of these people who left the country were those who were thinking about their family life and future of their children and family. Secondly, it's about the starvation and hunger. And the third one is it's about being just far away of the another expected war in that country that's like somehow being lobbied by groups, and then it's going on in that country. So what exactly we need right now is, as Farishta said, to focus on the grassroots organizations, on the organizations and the people and the persons and the communities which are exactly having reach to the ground. They really reaching ground. One of the mistakes of the past 20 years, it was focusing on some cities, focusing on some big projects in fancy cities of Afghanistan, and forgetting everything about countryside, not only the woman, but the men as well, but the development as well. Yeah. I have been to one of the villages of Wardak province just in March. Trust me, the people living in that village were still living in 100 years or like near about more than 100 years ago. They were still not at least having the canalization system. They were still going for just a washroom to open area. There were like no water, no system, nothing. And not me. So I was there to open my own center of maternity health care. So I realized how the things are. So now what we need is the same, that we don't need to repeat the mistakes. We need to learn from previous 20 years activities. We need to review them, and we need to this time focus on how exactly we can reach the ground. And the basic and important persons or group which can help us, it's women of the society, it's the woman of the country, which exactly can help us.
Zarifa, thank you very much. It's very powerful, and it's right into the to the question that we wanted to ask. We've already started answering, and what should those outside in the international community, whether they're development agencies or they're NGOs or people who just want to support all your efforts for change now. I think you quite rightly have underlined how there are 20 years of huge amounts of aid that went into Afghanistan, very often in elites building unsustainable activities, and a lot of the money to consultants, very often Western consultants who went there. So already among you said that, one is that one should be approaching and including within any international efforts Afghan women to be able to identify and act and intervene in whatever aid can be delivered to civil society. There clearly you have underlined that there needs to be a change of the practices of the past. Sarah, I'm wondering if you could say something about that. What should be the way forward here now for international actors, whether they're NGOs or development agencies? What should they be doing to get to civil society and to the women that you're talking about?
Right. I mean, you have a few answers right in this panel session. You have Sveto, you have Farishta John, you have Pashtona John, and you have Zarifa John. So you have women you can access. They each have expertise within their own provinces, within their own areas. It is not difficult to find 34 women from every province who are leading in their own right, whether they are now displaced due to the war and due to the Taliban takeover, or whether they're in hiding in the country. It is, if you look for women, you can find them. And I'm sure just within Firishajan and Pashtunajan and Zaifajan, I'm sure that you have the entire country just covered right there. Primarily because my work is in Kabul, I don't have the kind of expertise that they do across the country, but even myself, I can provide 10 women who are in the country who could work on fantastic initiatives directly with women who are working in grassroots, unfortunately hidden, but definitely can take on the lead for a lot of projects. But I want to bring up a couple things. One is Pashtunajan had listed all of the women who are now completely gone from everyday life in Afghanistan. One, which is a fundamental one, which we had, was women judges, women lawyers, women prosecutors. And why I'm bringing this up is because people need to understand that the Afghan woman has been left completely to her own devices. Before there were Afghan judges, there was a court of law, and women judges were a huge part of Afghan society. Just on the day of August 15th, I was working with a lawyer at Yale Law School to get 300 Afghan women judges out of the country, 300. And that was only from a few provinces. So women had a huge part in the execution of the law and also holding the Taliban accountable. One of my own family members prosecuted over 500 Talibs over 20 years. So this is not a small thing. And the fact that now we have this huge exodus of women in the legal sphere, I mean, when a woman has something that happens to her, there is no one to protect her. There is no one to defend her. There's no one for her to look for guidance. And if you look at it, the woman is basically being asked to birth and then stay alive until she dies. And that's why they're only providing maternity assistance and for the most emergency healthcare. That is what the Afghan woman has been belittled to, is that you make children and then at the end you die. And I'm sorry to be direct, but that's exactly what's happening. And that's why you see this gap in everything else. The woman getting an education, following her dreams, that's just not pertinent to the Taliban. It's pertinent to their families, to their daughters, to their wives, to their nieces, but not to the Afghan girl. And just like Firishajan had said, I mean, like I said in the beginning as well, this Islamic curriculum that they're talking about, they can follow Saudi Arabia, they can follow United Arab Emirates. This is not, a very niche curriculum that has been made in Afghanistan to completely brainwash these young women. That is not the case. Young Afghan girls are proud to learn about their history, to learn about the Quran, to learn about Islamic beliefs. So again, we need to bring it back into knowing. I mean, that needs to be known before approaching any solution. So why do I bring that up? It's when you're looking for grassroots initiatives to work for, especially women, it can't be just keep women alive, keep them birthing, that's it. It has to also be, how do you allow these women to flourish? How do you allow women to study? I mean, like Firishajan had said, we cannot normalize this. This cannot be normalized. We are destroying half of the population, and this is a crime. So when the international community is looking for people to work for, learn about their mission. Who is leading them? Who are they working for? Are they working with all different ethnicities? Are they working with the minorities? Number one, the event in Bamyan, when we had the young women and girls who went and stopped that Talib campaign for women's education. They ripped up the posters, they stood up, they fought. The next day, dozens of them were arrested. We still don't know what happened to many of them. And they're from the minority Hazara population, one of the most attacked minorities in our country. We all know that. And again, they're arrested. We don't know. It's a woman stands up and then she's arrested, she's arbitrarily detained. What can we do to mitigate that? We work with people on the grassroots who know their communities. And at the same time, when you're supporting them, there needs to be a benchmark of, we will support you. And if the Taliban reneges, we will meet them eye to eye. It can't just be like, here's money, go do it. When you're gonna give money, follow them at the benchmark. And by benchmark, I don't mean for the women. Don't put benchmarks on Afghan projects, please. I mean, I'm tired of seeing benchmarks of you have to help this many women before you can achieve the next amount of funding you get. No, don't put limitations on funding for women. Put benchmarks on the Taliban. When you're working with them, say, we expect this from you. And if you don't do it, we will renege. And if people are saying that, you have to give the Taliban a chance, okay. But it can't just be we're giving them a chance and we're stepping back. Put specific, stringent benchmarks for the Taliban, not women's projects. And that's happening time and time again with USAID, with a lot of the UN programs, where there's these very archaic, unrealistic benchmarks. And especially even in my work in Ihtisab, these things don't happen with a snap of a finger. Change is incremental. Sustainable change is incremental. It takes time. It can happen overnight, especially in an environment as volatile as a Taliban Afghanistan. You have to understand that we can't keep putting band-aids over problems anymore. We have to be patient. And with that patience, we need the expertise. And that can only come from the ground.
Sarah, I think that's a very potent message. And if we think about, Afghanistan is a very poor country. Incomes are very low, and it's a kind of condemnation of the last 20 years of international aid that's gone into Afghanistan with very little to show now. When we think about the rural economy, I know that Taliban has banned, again, as they did when they were previously in power, the production of opium poppies in the countryside. You talk about Fereshte, you're talking about the different projects where women were taking a lead as head of household, starting businesses and this kind of thing. Obviously, moving forward, empowering women is also in recognizing that women are playing this role in creating wealth. In production in Afghanistan. And in fact, this was not really seen very clearly, I don't think, in the 20 years of donor intervention there. So if now you're suggesting a couple of important things, I think. One is to somehow get resources to women on the ground, identifying, supporting women's initiatives and finding ways to channel resources to them. I read somewhere, Farishta, in the news about a move to try to use cryptocurrency to try to transfer funds more directly to society, and I suppose working with the Havala and whatnot in order to cash that cryptocurrency. I'm not a fan of cryptocurrency, but I found it fascinating that this seemed to be one of the tactics taken up recently to try to get resources to those who might use them in the ways that you're talking about. And I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about that. Obviously, you're all arguing about, of course, girls' access to education, but I think you're making a much more, even more powerful argument about the ways in which women need to be able to work in the public space, the ways in which women have been playing such a central role in the reproduction of households and in very local level economic activity. In the rural areas, the 20 years have had very little impact. So I'm wondering if you have something, each of you, that you might want to say about that kind of economic reality, and I think particularly you're saying some very important things that, in terms of insofar as donors are involved, there should be severe conditionality put on the Taliban government as to any funds, et cetera, that are transferred through the state. Yeah, Karishna.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think definitely, like, based on my personal experience, And as a technologist myself, and as a refugee who was born in Iran and denied accessing education, as a woman who studied computer science, who got a master's degree, went and taught as a computer science professor in the university in Herat, you face a lot of backlashes because you are outnumbered. The women in technology in Afghanistan is still a very small number, and it's a male-dominated field of study. And for me to make sure how we can enable women in that sector to be able to, have access to equal resources, such as education, such as access to the workforce, either in the country or outside, was very important for me. And from what we witnessed, especially with what happened in Afghanistan and, since August, and our students, losing a lot of jobs and being at home and being a main breadwinner in the family, using cryptocurrency certainly was very, very helpful in a way that once you live in an area that's always unstable, the current situation and political situation is always fluid, and there's a lot of variables, you really want to make sure that you want to be as much as you can independent from the central government, especially as women who are more vulnerable when there's war, there's conflict. Women are always, at the front of being the victim. So you really try to understand how you can protect yourself, not only your well-being, but also your identity, your also financial and stability. And I think that's what is beautiful about crypto, and it's very empowering about crypto, is that in a scenario like Afghanistan, what we witnessed, the banks collapsed, the economy collapsed, the Western Union wasn't functioning, PayPal is not working in Afghanistan. All of a sudden, organizations, NGOs, and places, people like Pashtani and I and Sarah and other people who wanted to send money to Afghanistan, all of a sudden, okay, like what we can do, there's a lot of restrictions here and there's a lot of hurdles, and you want to make sure that the money is going firsthand to the pocket of the people in the right way. You don't want to do a mismanagement, as I said, during these past 20 years of where the money literally went, is it really went to the pocket of Afghan people, or to your point, it went to a lot of unnecessary, consultation fees and stuff like that. So with that being said, with the project that we actually did with the Binance charity, what we did, we identified 100 families of our students. We created a wallet for them, an online digital wallet for them. And then the Binance charity directly sent crypto to our students' wallet. So the perfect scenario here is that it was private. No one could track them. The girls were the only people who knew that they were receiving money. And then they were able to, go and cash it out in a trusted crypto exchange that we know. And then, have the family use the money for medical, rent, food, and stuff like that. So I believe that, again, when I talk about it, I know that it's a very niche market. You can't target everyone. And of course, the issue of girls going to school in person and physically and working and showing their faces at the school and in the office is important, because representation matters. Because when you don't have women in the office, you don't hear their voice. But there's an alternative here, unfortunately, because of the situation right now. There are women who can't go outside to work because of Taliban policy. There are women who are in hiding because they have done, work that are against the Taliban core, value and policy, and their life is in threat. The mobility is a big issue. A lot of people cannot travel right now. Even it's more restricted than before. So how you can target that population so that you can keep their identity private, you can keep their well-being private, but also access them to the global economy so that they can use their skills and their expertise and make money. And that's what we're trying to do. Starting October, we actually shifted our entire curriculum online and had up to now, I think 80% of our students back on track to school. We've actually have about 30 of our graduates as of, again, let's say October, are working for different companies and organizations and individuals working on their coding and graphic design. And we literally right now have students who made $1,500 per month working on different projects, getting paid in crypto in Afghanistan, helping her family. So the point here is that you have to activate those connections, if it's in Afghanistan, either if it's outside of Afghanistan, find those talents, find those people who can work remotely and give them the resources. What we did, we gave laptops to all of our students. We purchased them monthly internet packages so that they can focus. With the students who were vulnerable from the families, we helped them with the cash assistance so the family won't be, mentally and physically in a situation that not let the girls to go and study. So these are all the factors that I think for us enabled us to survive, especially in this moment that we see that there's not a lot of incentive. And I think if we think about that, we can create a much more sustainable ecosystem in a way that you identify the girls, you give them the equal resources such as laptops and internet, you help the families if you can in case of cash assistance and incentive so that they let the girls continue their education and work. And then at the end of the day, you create this pipeline with other key players, companies and people outside of Afghanistan to give them the opportunity for work. And again, I want to just mention that don't think that you give this job to the girl in Afghanistan as of sympathy or empathy. No, majority of the girls of our school who got the job, they were talented. They were as good coder as the coder in North America, in any other countries, and the clients are very happy. So there are millions or thousands of these girls in Afghanistan that they don't have resources. And I think that's the responsibility of all of us in this call. If we can to pull that string and connect them and create this sustainable pipeline of ecosystem. And again, cryptocurrency, certainly, I know that there people have different opinions about it, but that's actually was one of the key saviors for us to help the girls to get income and support their families.
Farishta, I think you're suggesting something really important that needs to be talked about among all those who actually want to see resources reaching the people who can invest them into the futures of Afghan people and Afghan women. And it requires a real change in the mindset within, the circles of international aid, and also not just the agencies, the NGOs, to think about things more in this way, breaking from the formulas of the past, where so little of the resources actually, anyway, even without the kinds of security blockages you talk about, are reaching people in the communities. But it also has to be done to scale. And that's a really important conversation to have. But I know I want to move on to some of the questions from the audience, because this is so fascinating. We're running out of time. But maybe if Pashana and Sarah, I don't know if you want to briefly come back on these points before I move to the questions. Very briefly, please, so we can hear what some people are asking. Yeah, Pashana.
Okay. Cool. So I'm gonna go first. Thank you so much, James. And I second everything what Farishta and Sarah said. You can't be just making women making sure that women are kept alive and that's it. They're not lab rats. They are citizens of Afghanistan. They need careers, they need education, they need healthcare, they need equal opportunities, they need all that to survive and thrive. One thing you also said, James, that Afghanistan is a poor country. Yes, that's the reason the laws that actually apply to the Arab countries don't apply to us, because we are a poor country and we are a Central Asian country. So culturally, we don't follow the Arab culture. We follow the Central Asian culture, which is way different than that of the Arab culture. And in the Middle East, or in the way where Sharia is actually being applied in extreme levels, there even the men have wells of oil to support their not working agenda, or not women not working. While in Central Asian countries, women are nomad who are actually leading the livestock, the cattle stock, and they actually do that because that's a poor country like Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and because that's the only way of earning, because it's a colder region. Now, don't get me wrong, Afghanistan does have a very huge population of Kyrgyz, Uzbeks, Tajiks, Hazaras, and Kizilbash, and all of these people are trained in that. All of them have the same lineage, and including Pashtuns, who have a huge community of nomads. So our country follows that avenue. And just so you know, in the 90s, when the Taliban imposed the burqa, or like, you know, the fact that you have to hide your face, it was actually Akuchi women who actually said that you're kidding me, right? I'm supposed to work in the fields with my face hidden. Now, I'm not saying that everyone is anti-hijab or something like that. My mom, she hides her face from 4 of my uncles, even to this date. So there is different cultural context, and we have to respect that. But you can't be imposing what the Sharia is used in the Arab countries to be used in Afghanistan, because Afghanistan is a different landscape, different geography, and we have different revenue and resources. That's the first thing we need to learn. Every Arab family, or majority of them, have some sort of revenues to their names from oil. We don't have that. We're a poor country. We need girls in schools so that they can earn for their family. We need the 50% of the country to be earning actively and every day so that they can pay taxes, and those taxes pay salaries of government employees, and those government employees work in the government to make it functional. And that government, when it's functional, it actually gives out public services like education, like electricity, like healthcare. So it's just simple mathematics that you do. Now, coming back to one thing that you said, what could be done and what people like us do. From the last time that I spoke with you, I was just in hiding. Right now, I'm running more than 4 schools functional, 400 girls, just like Farishta's model. And thankful to Farishta for introducing us to amazing teachers. And in collaboration with her and many others, we have been able to function smoothly. We are functioning in Kabul, Kandahar, Bamyan, Takhar, and we are hoping to start functioning in Mazar, in Helmand, in Nangarhar, and in Faryab. And these are all communities who are reaching out to us. So don't think that it's a project. No, it's just simple fundraising. Women from those communities are reaching out to us to work with them. 100 girls per province are being educated right now to become the leaders that they are supposed to be, to lead projects like Ehtisab or Code to Inspire, to become the people that they need to be in order to fill the gaps that their communities are facing right now, be it poverty, be it banking system, be it literacy, be it anything of that sort. So you have to understand, educating the 50% of the 100% should be a priority, because boys are going to school. It's the girls who are not. So prioritizing them, focusing on initiatives that actually focuses on girls, not just keeping them alive, but also on their well-being, on their psychological, economical, political even, and educational well-being is very important at this point. We need a generation of active leaders to lead this. We might be the leaders of today, but there needs to be another generation that will take the charge in next 10 to 20 years. And we are responsible for the well-being of those leaders. So for me, it's very important, apart from international community, to think of my community first, to think of my people first, to think of my girls first. And for that, the first thing I would always do is make sure that they are in school, that they get literacy, that they are looked out for, and most importantly, that they are not seen as victims, but warriors that they are, as daughters of Afghanistan, and they should be honored like one.
Thank you very much. Zarifa, did you want to come back here, or shall I move to a couple of the questions from the audience?
I just wanted to add a short note on this, that when we are talking about what we need to do right now, I just want to add about something that internationally, the international community are having the responsibility to help us. Definitely, it's our war, it's our thing. We will fight it. We are not tired of it, and we will definitely fight it. And we are so sure that we will definitely win it too. But exactly, we need the help of international community who were part of bringing the same situation of today to my life or to our lives. So we need them to step some concrete things, especially in terms of opening schools to girls. I just newly, as I stated, newly in an open letter to United Nations Security Council, to European Union, and to White House, and so many other leaders of the world, that first ever thing that let's put sanction on Taliban's travel and let's ban them. Let's start pushing all those countries which are right now hosting the Taliban leaders' families and giving them platforms for education. I think this is also a key point, and at the same time, this international community need to focus on how, because if schools are open and the same as past, teachers are still not having their salaries, so I'm sure this is also again another conflict in another format. So we need to help, we need to support, we need to start sanctions and bans on Taliban, and we need to definitely, it's our fights once again, but we need international community to be by our side and to step concretely.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, I have trouble monitoring all these questions in the chat, but let me put at least 2 of them on the table and give you each a chance to respond, and then I'm going to ask the organizers also to send me a message copying what they think are the priority questions we should address. So first, Tom Valenti is asking, hi, my question is for Zarifa, but I think it can go beyond Zarifa as well. You mentioned there's a difference between the nation and the government, and the nation helps shape and the nation helps shape the government. So could I ask, how do you define and differentiate between the nation and the government? And how does the nation shape the government? Briefly, maybe. It's a more slightly theoretical question.
Yeah, I will be so brief on that. While I'm saying that we need to put humanitarian crisis further than politics and government, it's just because I don't want to see more people die, as we just got the report of WFP. I think this is the biggest important reason. I always say this. Secondly, why I think the nation, I believe nation forms government, when we are coming to politics and we are like, when we are coming to the form of the governments and the studies about that, it's always the nation who builds not only government but shape the government and helps how to function. But in Afghanistan, not only now, since so many long years, we have been always others bringing copy paste of other systems and shapes of the government and systems to my country. That's why we always fail. We are not able to build a nation. We were not able to build a nation, and unfortunately, as Afghans, we also had our own domestic crisis, but mostly the problem was how we were not able to put the people of this country more before deciding about how the term of the type or any other things related to government is. So politics needs to be the second topic when we are discussing about human rights on the table about any country.
Okay, I think this is really, there's a lot that could be said on this, and perhaps the others want to come back, but even within the context of this next question that's been posed, and it's a question on national reconciliation. So violence against women, hunger and poverty are the consequences of this war that has lingered on for the last 4 decades. While the war has its roots outside Afghanistan, it grows on the societal and political division that has existed inside Afghanistan. I would be surprised if we do not talk about the need for national reconciliation driven by Afghans themselves in forums such as these. We need to create an awareness at the grassroots level on the need of reconciliation and national dialogue, and women of Afghanistan are pivotal to that process. I'm wondering if any of you want to comment about this. How do you see some kind of reconciliation to the point where you can get on with doing the kinds of work you've all been talking about here that need to be done? Sarah, do you want to comment first? Because I think I shortchanged you last round.
No worries. Thank you, James. You know, reconciliation is a difficult subject because right now I feel like the Taliban thrives on division and keeping the country isolated within different pockets. One is the isolation that is happening, especially with the minorities. I mean, not even isolation. I mean, we saw a mass exodus of Afghan Sikhs who have been there since time immemorial. We are seeing the Shia Hazara community who not only, I mean, were they murdering Shia Hazaras, but now ISIS-K is attacking them, and the Talibs, I mean, it could be the last of their concern as to the protection of the Shia Hazaras. So we're seeing this isolation, and I think communities are just they're recoiling, and no one can blame them for that. I think they have been volleyed between two groups. One was the previous government and the Taliban, and I see this huge recoil, and I think it's very early to even speak about reconciliation. I think right now we're just in an emergency kind of impulsive period in Afghanistan where we need to figure out the emergency issues, which is education and humanitarian aid. I mean, the notion of country building, even though I am so I'm so passionate about it, I don't know what the answer is, because, you know, I think that there is time that needs to allow other leaders, especially within the youth, who can build trust within Afghanistan and then speak about reconciliation. I think anyone coming out right now, it's going to do the complete opposite. It's going to create further isolation. Whoever is wanting to lead, that's another thing. There has to be an onus to lead. Whoever wants to lead needs to make the decision now about how am I going to sustainably build trust within this national reconciliation that you're speaking about. And it needs to be someone who understands all of the nuances within the country of the different ethnicities and the different groups and the different political aspects, and work on that. I have mentioned this before, that if it is the NRF, the way that they're going about it right now, in my opinion, where they're isolating specific groups and saying that they are not, I don't think that that is the way. I think it requires time, and it requires an understanding of what is it that they want, you know. And I think if the NRF or any resistance group is to succeed, it cannot be that, you know, it was before Pashtuns and now we are going to get rid of them and now we are going to make this new country. It needs to be, this is Afghanistan, this is the map that we've all decided on for many, many years what this map is. And if you are going to lead this country, it needs to be within that construct of that map that we are all very much aware of. And I want to see that Afghanistan. I want to see whoever leads my country, that it is that map that is shaped like this. I don't want to see any, brokerages. And I think that it can be done, but it has to be done with empathy. It has to be done with respect and with time. I think Afghans can wait. They're willing to wait. They don't want any more impulsive decisions. And I hope that whoever comes out to govern understands that. And also the gains that we've had, whatever national reconciliation is to happen, the gains that Afghan women have made, the gains that we have made, whether they are small or incremental, they must be protected. There is a brilliant generation of Afghan youth. I lead a group called Afghan Students Hub. I get hundreds of messages every single day from high school girls and boys in Afghanistan who are like, I want to study. Can you help me? Can you find me mentors? I want to study. I want to study. I want to learn. Listen to the people. The Taliban is saying that this is not important. It is important. It is integral. They want to learn. Give them what they want. A leader who cannot do that is not primed to lead this country.
This is a very powerful insight. Pashtana, did you want to say something about this question of reconciliation?
I think Sarah said everything I wanted to say.
Okay, that's good. Harishter? No? there's a very kind of practical question that's been asked in a couple of different ways by people, and and I can understand why they're asking. And so the question goes like this: do you think there are ways to help Afghan women who do not have access to internet or do not have a laptop help with their education? Because a lot of what you've talked about is these wonderful networks online, but of course, there's many who are probably not connected. And I'm wondering, and since all of you are involved to some extent with reaching people through various online methods, do you want to say something about that? Farishte.
Yeah, absolutely. That's certainly an important question, because not a lot of people have the economic freedom to buy laptops or to have laptops or to have internet connections. It's such a luxury now when people deal with hunger. I mean, who want to pay for internet or have laptops? So I think that's like one thing that if you are pursuing and pushing for online education, partnering, with companies, tech companies who can, give you some free laptops, or, partnering with satellite internet that they can provide maybe free internet connections for you might be something to think about. But beyond that, of course, there's a way that you can create, apps that can work offline. You can upload a lot of educational tutorials, content, videos, in those apps, and then it can function on a very, kind of like a basic smartphone, and they can, have that smartphone at home and continue that. And again, home education, again, as it is sad to think about, we want to send the girls to school because, again, representation matter. When you see the girls walking in the street with their uniform, and it's very heartwarming and encouraging, but you don't want to waste time. You want to like keep them excited and encourage. And I think Passion is also doing a great job doing that, to create like a small level of like, communities at home, people offering their home, and, people can bring their daughters, and you get, there's thousands of teachers right now who unfortunately don't work, and you can have them host them at your home. If you have the financial freedom and stability, then you can provide them with some papers, books, pens. And if you're a little bit of a more bigger organizations, then you can find people who can support and donate to your cause so you can help more. So at this point, we have to just be creative in a way to be how we can use the resources on the ground that we have, either if it's offline, if it's online, to just keep the ball rolling. We don't want to stop the momentum, because if we just stop it, it would be very, very difficult to get back to where we are, which we already, lost a lot. It's been 6 months that the girls are not going, and it's a huge gap. So just being creative, and I think that creativity you see in whole different levels that all of you guys, Sarah is doing, Passion is doing, and a lot of people I know doing in education sector, that they target, even it's 5 people to like 10 to 100 people, and they keep the ball rolling.
I want to come back to both Zarifa and Pashtana on this. Zarifa.
Thank you so much, James. Actually, first agreeing with Farishta, I would love to add something that my own experience working for these 2 centers into Wardak and Kabul. These 2 centers have been working within the communities by the support of the community people. The doctor was working in the center. She is one of the community members, like living in the same area. The teachers, like example, the teacher which is teaching handicrafts to the girls, she have been herself widow for 12 years, and she have been raising her children, like 4 children, all alone. So this is how first topic, that we need to work within the communities, and I'm sure that can open more gates. But when we are talking about online education, with due respect to all the work of this amazing woman in this panel and how they are being creative. I know they're trying the gaps and trying to fix it, but still, let's not forget that we are still having so much more kind of like districts of Afghanistan. Like example, Wardak province, when you're just 1 kilometer far from the capital, network is just gone and it's not working properly. Not only with it's not with the internet as well. So definitely the alternatives, as Farshajan says, it will work. To be creative is the most important thing. I agree with Farshajan is right now, but I think we don't need to like put one above the other. We need to right now we need to use all the opportunities, all the and help all these projects which are really working on ground and they're reaching the people in ground, especially in terms of education. My own experience when we were starting this education center firstly in Kabul, in that same area we were talking, firstly we started talking to the same woman like key personalities of that neighborings of the society of the communities, and these women were giving us a list of other girls or women which are needy and they are they are now being trained in this center. They are monthly receiving some amount of money as their as some small amount of money like a salary for them, or maybe we can say it's like transportation expenses, somehow like that. And the same time they are receiving 8 packages each 3 months of food. So this is how things are working, and this is how the everything, I think each action that is being taken by people in the country, doesn't matter they're out or in, it needs to be supported, it needs to be focused, it needs to be promoted, and we need to just focus on it. But yeah, exactly, taking care of or keeping in mind the realities of Afghanistan is most key point that I need to mention on it on the last. Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. Pashtana.
I'm just going to keep it precise. One sentence. I think the best and easiest way for people to engage with people, apart from being online, is radio. I think radio is a good resource that the Taliban still don't focus on. As much as we think that it's useful, it's very powerful. It's always in the houses of people who believe strongly that TV is not halal and everything, but there's always a radio that they listen to, and they listen to news channels, they listen to Radio Azadi, Mashal Radio, and everything of that sort. So I think radio is very important, and we ourselves have partnered up with Radio Azadi, and we're focusing with them for educational programs. So as Farishta said, you can be as creative you want and as helpful you want. It's always up to you how much luxury do you have, or how much you are willing to go to support every person in need, and how much do you prioritize them. But also, I think including that, radio would be a very good addition to that package. Yeah.
Thank you, Pashtana. We're coming very quickly to the end of our time. And so I want to give each one of you a chance to come back with a kind of parting message for the people on this call, or a message to the world about the current situation of Afghanistan. I mean, I have seldom seen such a collection of powerful, insightful women as are sitting on this panel. And I would like you to be able to briefly give us your thoughts to take away. And perhaps I do this in reverse order from the way that we started. And Sarah.
Thank you so much, James. It's been just such a pleasure to be on this panel. Thank you so much again to LSC and to Svito for inviting me today. And, you know, if I would say that what we've learned over the last 20 years is that, especially in my work, which is civic tech and using technology to impart changes within communities, is band-aid solutions, copy-paste programs don't work in Afghanistan. One of the biggest mistakes that happened was focusing on projects that were led by internationals, led by consultants, paid $11,000 versus a very talented, just as equally smart Afghan national who would be paid maybe $1,000. We've learned that Afghans know best, and perhaps we don't know what to do politically. It is very, very volatile. We can make changes on the ground. We can make changes within grassroots programs. You have 2 to 3 women here who you can speak directly to about supporting them. And if it's not you specifically your networks, there is change that we can make, immediate change, whether it is humanitarian aid or whether it is girls in school, whether it is technology, innovative solutions to different problems. We can still serve the Afghan people. There are ways, but we've learned that things that we impart from other parts of the world into Afghanistan will fail disastrously. And also band-aid solutions, projects which are about a year long with very unrealistic benchmarks don't work. And I'm bringing this topic specifically because I know that this government is not a government that we'll be able to work with. And that means that we're going to have to work around that, which is unfortunate, but that's just the reality. And I think that legitimizing this government, a government which I don't believe it's a government, but that's just the word that we'll use, one that has lied to the international community, to Afghan people, to Afghan girls. They have destroyed dreams. They have destroyed so many girls who, woke up on March 23rd, excited to go back to school. And that means that we have to be stringent and direct with them. We will still do our work, but the Taliban will not stop us. If they decide to continue negate this fundamental right, whether it is access to humanitarian aid because of the very misogynistic platform, we will work around it. Afghans are resilient. I know that it is a cliche word, but we won't be giving up. And, I'm proud to be on this panel with these women. I'll be working with them to do whatever I can. And I urge whoever is listening to this panel to work with these women. They know exactly what they're doing. And if they don't, they'll refer you to someone who can. So again, thank you so much.
It's very clear. Zarifa.
Thank you so much, James. It was really an honor to be in this panel. Thank you so much, Savito. It was like great being here, hearing from all others, and sharing my own insights as well. At least finally something more different than all the discussions that normally I'm having, like on my panel discussions and my interviews. So I really loved it. Thank you so much for making this possible. And last one, what I really want to address once again is about, let's review all 20 years ago and learn from the mistakes that happened to not only women, but to the community, to all the country, to all the people of the country. I think that's the important topic. And whenever we are able to learn that mistakes, I'm sure that we can work more better in Afghanistan. But as Sarah said, we are not able to work with government, but working around this government is more tough. But yeah, once again, we Afghans, we are committed to do that. We are ready to do that. But what we need is the sources, it's the support, and it's the help of all those who believes on us, or who can trust us, and then we can make them to trust us to deliver things exactly on the ground to the people and work for the betterment of the lives of women, not in terms of just school, university, or job, but in each possibility of freedom that they have as a human being. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much. Fireshte.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for organizing this panel. It was very informative. It's a pleasure to be able to talk here and kind of like share and hear everyone's insight. I think to everyone who's listening to this, I would say that stand with girls and women of Afghanistan, you know, and be true about it, and don't make it normalized that they are not going to school, they don't have access to very basic fundamental human rights that a lot of girls and women around the world are practicing, and a lot of them are taking it for granted. But the women of Afghanistan are suffering. The situation in Afghanistan and what's going on reminds me of this saying from Rumi, who is a 13th Farsi poet, who says, where there is ruin, there is hope for a treasure. And to me, the treasure are the girls and women in Afghanistan. And by investing in their work, in their education, we will make a prosperous and also a peaceful Afghanistan, where the women hopefully are going to lead the country, and Afghanistan will rise from the ashes of war and conflicts. So don't forget that if you don't invest in girls and women of Afghanistan, and if you forget them, you will never ever be able to see that Afghanistan, that the women fought so hard the past 20 years to make that happen. And it will be, every day will be the same as the day since August. Thank you.
Thank you. Pashtana, last word.
I like how you're like just last word. Thank you so much, James. Thank you for making this happen, especially Sveto and her amazing work. I love her work. So shout out to Chadari, and you should all check their page, just so you guys know, because that's one of the amazing things. Storytelling is part and crucial part of Afghan lives, especially Afghan women, and not a lot of people do it honestly. So please do check out their work. Apart from that, last thing I would like to say is, when you become a women rights leader in Afghanistan, know the privilege that you are honoring, and you're representing a very warrior-like, but also humble people of Afghanistan. And when you do that, make sure that you do represent their concerns, their voices, and the reality on the ground, and not what is good for you or your career. So the most important thing I think for us would be is to honor the needs and demands of the people on the ground and representing them in all honesty, but also asking the international community that continued bombing our people for the past 2 decades to actually ask for reparations, to actually make sure that this time my girl who is put in school is not politicized, but it's actually given her human right, because it is her human right, not just a political move on the ground. So I would stop with that. Thank you.
I thank you very much. I want to thank the Chadari Project and the Student Association for International Peace and Security. I hope the students who are listening here will stay in touch with the Student Association to pursue this discussion and active involvement with Afghanistan. Like I said before, I'm humbled by the insightful and very wise words that all of you had to say. So Pashtana and Fireshte and Zarifa and Sarah, it's really been an honor for me to listen to you and to chair this activity. So, and thanks to everybody for participating here right in the middle of the Easter break. Thanks very much.